Pay me, pay me, pay me my silver now. Pay me or go to jail. Pay me my silver now.
RoadToRoota.com. Starting off with a little private road discussion, then going to go into the YouTube news, which I will post later today as well. I want to talk about Little by Little with Andy Schectman. Of course, Andy Schectman of Miles Franklin. We love him to death. Smart as hell. We need him on the Fed board. But he did an interview with Judy Shelton, Dr. Judy Shelton. Now, he's talked about Judy Shelton quite a bit. Most people have never heard of Judy Shelton. I didn't know much about Judy Shelton until I listened to this interview, and I'm like, holy crap. She is saying exactly what the Road to Roota has been saying a very long time, and she is in the know. She is saying that the central bankers of old, Volcker and Greenspan mainly, are 100% aware and know exactly what gold means in this system that we have. And they are lying, and they are blatantly lying to humanity. And she talks about that. She knew them both very well. Volcker passed away. Greenspan's on his last legs. If you guys have followed Road to Roota long enough, and I'll get into this in a second, you know that I think Alan Greenspan was absolutely trying to destroy the monetary system by using weak economic policies and not regulating derivatives. And that was always his plan from day one. And since he had invented the electronic banking system back in the 60s and 70s, yes, he blamed himself for Y2K, he is absolutely the one to pull the plug on it. And it's not an easy thing to do. You need to get the entire system to a point where it will self-destruct. And that's where we are now with we don't even know how many, 2, 3, 4 quadrillion in derivatives holding the whole game up. When it falls is when we can restart the system. But everybody will lose everything in the old system for the most part, unless you hold it in your own possession. I've been screaming this for I don't know how long. It looks like the Biden administration is trying to do exactly that, load the crap up so that Trump takes over and the thing blows up in his face. It might happen before that. We got about 22 days before Trump gets into office. But I want to go through definitely go to the Miles Franklin YouTube channel and listen to the discussion. It's a little by little discussion with Andy. It's called Anchored in Gold, a conversation with Dr. Judy Shelton. But I want to talk about a couple key things for the private road members at Road to Roota so that you understand there's an overlap between what Judy Shelton is saying and her experience literally deep in the heart of the Federal Reserve System, knowing the key players. She's never worked for the Fed, which I found interesting. She got nominated to be on the Fed, but she's actually never worked for the Fed because they wouldn't let her in because she's an advocate of returning to a gold standard. She almost got in under the first Trump administration. I believe she is the one that will take the place of the current nominee to head the Fed. But we will see. But there's certain things I agree with 100%, and certain things I think the system won't be in the kind of condition needed to accept the kind of gold standards she talks about returning to. Anyway, I've highlighted a few areas that I love to discuss. Go to the Miles Franklin YouTube channel and listen to this 100% before you do anything else. Before you even listen to this, go listen to the entire discussion. It's about an hour. Andy is brilliant and lets her speak for a very long time about things that I'm sure he had on his list, and she just checked them off. But here she is talking about her knowledge, her relationship with Greenspan and Volcker.
But those are all the factors.
Hold on, I got this on 1.2 speed. I'm going to put it on one. I usually listen to things at 1.2 or 1.5. If like Jeffrey Christian, I might listen to a 2x speed. But anyway, 1x speed, here we go.
That influenced my attraction. And gold is so logical. It's so universal. It's universally recognized and historically acknowledged as a form of money. I've gotten to know Alan Greenspan extremely well. He liked my Soviet book and sent me a note back in 1990. And ever since, I enjoyed a good collegial relationship with Alan Greenspan and with Paul Volcker. So I feel like these giants who are not only in the arena, but also from academia, can all talk so logically. They're so conversant in describing the role of gold in monetary frameworks, historically and currently. Greenspan has said that gold is the only real money. And a former head of the IMF, a friend of mine in France, Jacques de la Rosière, in the last couple of months told me it's the only real money. So the people I really respect, most of them in their 90s or sadly have passed on, but who have been in the role of major central bankers or major economic thinkers and won Nobel Prizes for their work on historical monetary systems, they have no problem talking about gold. So I developed a pretty thick skin to people who might quickly write off a nominee for the Fed because she referred to gold as having many great virtues insofar as providing a reliable, stable money.
Obviously, she knows her shit. But the reality of this is a person who never worked at the Fed. She was at the Hoover Institute when she began relationships with the people running the global fiat monetary system. And I have been screaming for so long that Alan Greenspan was doing it all on purpose. Same with Paul Volcker. It's not like they don't know. But the reality of controlling a system long enough to run it on an unbacked fiat system could have only been accomplished with the introduction of computers and derivative trading back in the early 1970s by Alan Greenspan himself. He was the world's best financial computer programmer all the way up until when he left office in 2006. I do not think it's a coincidence that Satoshi said, I've been working on this project for a year and a half or 2 years or something like that, which aligns perfectly with Greenspan's leaving the Fed. I don't know. I don't think Alan Greenspan is Satoshi, but at the same time, everybody else has been working on Bitcoin longer, the Bitcoin type electronic money for very much longer than Alan Greenspan. And he's really the only one who can not reveal who he was at the time back in 2008 when the Bitcoin white paper was released. Do I still think I would put it at a 25-30% chance that Alan Greenspan is Satoshi. The other guy is Tatsuki Okamoto, who people don't talk about much, but I mean, I've read many of his papers on cryptocurrencies long before Bitcoin, and it lines up pretty damn well. And it's an anagram. His name is like an anagram or something like that to Satoshi Nakamoto. But definitely Alan Greenspan is knee-deep in the creation of an electronic monetary system. He invented the electronic banking system. He invented the first computer trading models. He invented the market control necessary to run an unbacked fiat system in the 1970s. Many people were coding and writing their own computer programs back in the 1960s and 70s. Two of the main guys that were doing this, one out in the open very much, John Kimeny, who invented basic computing, and the other was Alan Greenspan, very much in the background. We've done some remote viewing sessions with him, and my favorite is, I think it was Dick Allgaier or might have been Rock Archie, showed Alan Greenspan in his office talking to people in a room right next to him, a massive computer room in his office in, I think it was New York City. And through understanding more about what Alan Greenspan's firm did originally before he got into the Fed, absolutely 100% computer market analysis to start with. Once I remember, I was working for a guy when I was 18 years old, and he was running computer programs on the stock market on how to beat the system back in the early 1980 timeframe. And I was like, the guy was a multi-zillionaire. And I'm like, how the hell is he doing it out of his garage and he finally moved to Chicago for the commodities trading, and basically one of the first high frequency trading guys. His name was Blair Hull. He ran a company called Hull Trading or something like that. Sold Goldman Sachs for hundreds of millions of dollars. But that was my first introduction to computer trading, high frequency trading as they call it now. But back then, Greenspan had been already doing it for 12, 13 years, and was absolutely 100% in with the Federal Reserve. His mentor was Arthur Burns, the head of the Fed. That's how he ended up as the head of the Fed. But when he was on Ford's, the head of Council of Economic Advisors, that's a very strong position to hold. You got the ear of the president. You got basically control of the secret trading funds of the United States. They're not that secret. It's called by many different names. The Plunge Protection Team. That there's a fund that is not even discussed every day. I forgot what it's called. It was established in 1932 with the Gold Reserve Act. But yeah, it should be obvious to everybody if you've been on the road to Roota long enough, what has gone on since the early 1960s. Obviously, if you're in silver, silver's been rigged since the mid 1850s with the Opium Wars. I've gone through that many times. Charles Savoy has probably written the most exhaustive reports. It's called Silver Stealers. He's a nutball, so be careful. I don't know if he's still with us, but yeah, he's a nutball. He's contacted all the main people that I know in gold and silver, and he just goes crazy that, oh, you're stealing my information. He thinks that everything that has been talked about in silver is his information. And then I when he was coming after me, I said, hey, because he had published my work under his name, or my investigation under his name and I believe I was the first one to discover that the U.S. military had borrowed probably 2 to 3 billion ounces of silver to make the first atomic bomb, and I was the one who uncovered that. And he added that to his work, claiming it was his own. I go, hey, you're going to go after me for copyright when you're stealing my work? And then he just shut up after that. But yeah, he's a nutball. But his work on the Silver Stealers goes back massive amounts of research because back then you didn't have computers, right? Before the 1970s, when did the World Wide Web come out? 1990? So you really were in the dark. Most people were in the dark about computers prior to that. But there was only a handful of computer programmers back in the 60s when Alan Greenspan and John Kimmony, two best buddies from the same high school, were working together. John Kimmony made the decision to not become, he was all about, he was very, he didn't have a want for money and need for money. He could have done what Greenspan did in the early days, get as much money as possible through your computer programs. Countless billions of dollars Greenspan made in his early days. And then, when there's a legality part of earning money and there's an illegality part. Greenspan went to a better side to help the U.S. get out. We were being attacked financially all over the place. We always are, by every country on the planet and people off planet. So it's very important to control the monetary system if you have the world's reserve currency. Anyway, enough said of that. Let's go back to Judy Shelton. The next thing she talks about again, make sure you go and listen to the whole thing. Andy does a great job here. About 9 minutes in, let's get to it. She talks about the gold standard in Greenspan.
It's I see why you would wonder about that. When you consider that Greenspan was in until 2006. And then after that, I remember about a year after he left, he was interviewed on Fox Business by David Asman, who said, why do we need a central bank? So here's this preeminent central banker who had been called the maestro. He said, you ask a very interesting question. And he went through talking about fiat money, and that's what we have now. But he said, unless you have a gold standard or a currency board or some kind of a way to limit the issuance of money, we have found, history has shown, that you will have inflation with very deleterious effects. And he ended up that statement by saying, there are some of us, myself included, who still think we did very well under the classical international gold standard. So I would say as recently, and we still have Greenspan with us, out of the limelight, but there was that legitimacy, let's say, even if, and he told me this the day I was about to publish Money Meltdown. I was quoting some of his comments on gold, and he was sensitive to it. We talked about it in his office at the Federal Reserve. He said, I can't be a free spirit. I said, what do you mean? And he said, if I mention gold, or I'm quoted as saying that that's a good anchor, he said it causes reverberations. And he pointed to this array of terminals, away from his sitting area. He said, I can go into a closet and say what I think. And I said, but he said, and then he made it clear. He goes, it's not that I don't still hold those views. I said, well, then you must say it. But we agreed that what I would do is put forward the quotes that were already in the public realm. Now, he held the copyright to his essay, Gold and Economic Freedom. That was in Ayn Rand's book, Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal. That was 1966. But I said, I'm going to paraphrase some things we've said, and I'll put it in a footnote. But things you've said in the public realm, I can legally quote. And then he said, well, bring me a copy of your book. And when it comes out, he literally said this, but put it in a brown paper wrapper. Because if I'm walking up and down these halls at the Fed, it might not be good for business. So, but the bottom line is, Paul Volcker likewise, sometimes he would come to this meeting that Mundell had every year. We often sat together. And he would nudge me and say, why don't you pipe up about gold here? I mean, they were very comfortable talking about that. And Mundell would go back and look at the original articles of agreement for the International Monetary Fund.
So if that doesn't say a lot, it says a lot to me. One, that Volcker and Greenspan absolutely 100% knew that the gold standard would be returned to one day. And they knew that the current system was so fragile, so unbacked fiat money was so fragile, and it needed that complete non-discussion. I mean, it's censorship of the Federal Reserve Board head. The chairman of the Federal Reserve Board was censored in discussing their true thoughts about gold. And that's Paul Volcker and Alan Greenspan, who were basically the number one and number two when it came to being in a position during the time frame of computer market rigging from the early 70s to 2006, 2000. Obviously, it's still going on. But these are the two heads of the Fed that really did censor their speech, because they knew that the computer programs break down when everybody knows what's going on. I mean, obviously in gold and silver, we see the manipulation. It's blatant in front of your eyes. 300 times the amount of silver held on the COMEX, 300 times, and COMEX in the LBA in May is traded every day, every year. 300 times the total available. It's insane. And that's a guess, because the LBMA does not release its numbers as far as how much is really traded. They go in net trades. And even the head of JP Morgan Trading, who worked at the LBMA a long time ago, wrote in their monthly periodical, The Alchemist, it's called, he wrote, the actual numbers, we just put down net numbers on how much is traded today. The actual numbers are at least 3 times and probably a lot more the volume that's traded every day of derivatives just to maintain the price of gold and silver. So, but amazing. I mean, here's Judy Shelton walking down the halls of the Federal Reserve. She's at the Hoover Institute, which is, half a mile away, but she's hanging out with Paul Volcker and Alan Greenspan, and I think there's a sense of that they were grooming her. They were grooming her to be someone who would be available when needed. They knew they wouldn't. They knew they had to run this game as long as possible. Paul Volcker passed away a few years ago. Alan Greenspan's in his mid-90s now. He's going to pass away at some point. I think of anybody who deserves to see his accomplishment take place in our lifetimes, it would be Alan Greenspan, because his whole goal in life was to get the United States to return back to a gold standard. Oh, by the way, before Arthur Burns in the 70s, before Paul Volcker, it was Arthur Burns as head of the Fed in the 1970s. And oh, by the way, Arthur Burns just happened to be Alan Greenspan's mentor. So you got Arthur Burns, Paul Volcker, Alan Greenspan, all of them wanted to go back onto a gold standard. All of them knew that the price of gold and silver and all commodities and now all stocks, bonds, even the Federal Reserve notes, everything is run off derivatives now. The FX trading around the world, 100% rigged. When Jamie Dimon says he has $5 trillion being traded every day out of his money center in Florida, yeah, something's wrong with that. They have $3 trillion in assets, and yet $5 trillion every day is being traded out of their money center. It's a big con, and it's very difficult to support and continue with everybody knowing how the game is played. And this is all computers and derivatives. When Judy Shelton talked about Alan Greenspan having a big wall of monitors on the other side of his office, I'm laughing. I'm like, yeah, it used to be he had it hidden in the room next to him with a secret door. And one guy in there doing the cards, the punch card things, the early days of the computers. They call him the copy boy. I've talked about him quite a bit. All the secretaries at Townsend Greenspan were pissed because he got more money than they did, but he was actually Greenspan's computer guy. And they split ways a while ago. And he did some consulting. I don't remember his name off the top of my head. I can't remember everything from the Road to Roota Theory. If you go back, he's basically Rocky. I believe him to be Rocky in the Wishes and Rainbows cartoon, where Greenspan is Root A. It's also the name of the base of the financial system, which Judy Shelton talks about quite a bit in this discussion with Andy. You have to have a base. For her, it's going to be gold. And for Alan Greenspan, it was gold, but he invented a new one, Root A, which is a Fortran term. The basis of our financial system is Root A. And then I think the plan is to merge Root A and gold as the could it be a CBDC based on gold? She talks about, coming up in a second here, what kind of gold standard we could move on to, or an alternative. And she also talks about crypto. So let's keep going here. Let's see, I'm at 29:10. Again, make sure you guys go listen to this entire interview. Sorry, Andy, for leaving your discussions out. They are very good, great questions, but I don't have all the time, and I don't want to use your entire interview. Make sure you guys go to the Miles Franklin website. All right, here's the next discussion.
It did make sense to me, and thank you for your candor. It's fascinating to hear your perspective on that, and couldn't agree with you more. Shifting gears, then, Judy, back to gold. In your latest book, Good as Gold, which is an amazing book, I would highly encourage people to read it. You propose reconnecting the dollar to gold through federal treasury bonds with gold redeemability clauses. I guess you could call this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, kind of a quasi-gold standard. It's not the traditional gold standard that we saw prior to 1933, but nonetheless, it gives legitimacy to the dollar and to the treasury bond. And can you explain how this approach would work if enacted and what impact you think it would have on our global financial system and the monetary policy of the United States?
With pleasure. Thank you for the question, and thank you for mentioning the book. Any royalties on the book will go to Independent Institute. So I'm grateful that people buy the book or like the book. Well, the Independent Institute is a great organization, and they encouraged me to write the book. So I just want to, they're terrific. When I have found myself talking about the importance of sound money, and of course, then written off, oh, gold bug and all that, which, as I say, to me, the intellectual giants would take the opposite approach, but if columnists at the Post or Washington Post or New York Times, I think it shows a certain amount of ignorance about monetary history, but that's their problem. What I thought I would have to do, though, is have an actionable plan. You know, you can't just say, oh, I believe in the gold standard. We have, I think, 2.5 trillion outstanding in Federal Reserve notes. That's just paper U.S. money. And about 70% of it floats outside the United States. And you would see giant billfolds, and I have in Moscow and other places where they carry around $100 bills from the United States. We don't want to say, oh, we're going to use our gold to redeem that for you. So, I mean, we don't have enough, for one thing. At current market prices, we do have a considerable amount, 261 million ounces. So let's say at roughly, I was using 2,700, maybe it's 2,600 now, in between, but say about 700 billion worth. So I am not suggesting anything. I find myself saying, if someone says, oh, you're for a gold standard, I'm like, do you know what you mean by that? Or what do you think I mean by that? Because you, of course, are well-versed, and you could be talking about the gold standard, the classical international gold standard from 1880 to 1913. You could be talking about the Bretton Woods system, which was about 1944 through 71. I'm not talking about either of those. What I'm saying is something that I think is doable that would start to put the spotlight on what it means to have sound money, to look at the virtues of those former systems, which, for one thing, say the classical international gold standard was an organic system, self-disciplining. You don't even need a central bank to have a gold standard. If you define the dollar as a certain weight of gold, which Thomas Jefferson did with the Currency Act, and you define it with precision in terms of a specific weight of gold and silver, it doesn't mean the government is standing ready to give you gold or dollars in exchange for that. It means this is what a dollar is. That's what all countries did under a gold standard. And if you're an agent in the economy, meaning any one of us who's in the real economy, and you sense things are getting frothy, you think too much credit is being created for less than valid investment projects, you can redeem. That is, there's a standing level of convertibility that a dollar is worth this amount of gold, so you can exchange with other people. I mean, that's it. And that was available to individuals. So at the margin, when you would trade in paper for gold, you could go to your bank and do it, for example, that automatically contracted the money supply, because credit is based as a multiplier on the base money. So gold is the base money. So when you trade in something that otherwise could be multiplied, because you could sell your credit, they sell it, your note, your IOU. But if that contracts, you have contracted the money supply. So I like that approach, instead of 12 people who vote 8 times a year to decide what is the appropriate cost of capital at a free market economy.
Brilliant, but true, so true. And you know she's talking about base money. That's what Root A is. Root A is base money. I believe Root A does equate to gold behind the scenes. It is also I have said this many times on Analyzing the Road to Roota. Root A means many different things. One, it is a computer programming term in Fortran. And I found this in a very early 1970s Fortran manual from IBM. It showed a monetary system, root A, and then you have checking, savings, blah, blah, blah. Root A is the base position in a computer monetary system. Now, whether root A is symbolic of a gold standard, you have gold as your root A, or if you have nothing right now other than the computer rigging operations, Trump may be thinking about Bitcoin as root A of the monetary system, but you do have to have something anchoring. My take of what is root A right now is root A is the ability to rig all markets. That's root A, and it is completely corrupt, and I think Greenspan would agree with me. But he had to do it because of the situation we were in the 1960s and 70s, where the rest of the world was finding out that how fragile the system is. We've been at financial war with everybody since day one of the unbacked fiat system. I'd say since 1900, when the bankers set the price of gold at $20 and whatever cents, around $20 back then. What that did, it made it uneconomical to mine gold. And then they found all the gold in the Grand Canyon. It could have been before or after that, but there's billions and billions of ounces that were found in the banks of the Colorado River. A mini gold rush began, and then it was shut down because you couldn't mine it for less than $20. So everybody who tried to do it, nobody is arguing that, other than Jim Willey, who had no clue what he was talking about, that there's no gold in the banks of the Colorado River. There's billions and billions of ounces of gold. That is obvious to anybody who's done any research into that. And it was a huge topic in the 1920s. How much gold is there? Because there's only 300 million ounces that have ever been mined in history back then. And now you're looking at billions and billions of ounces sitting in the banks of the Colorado River in placer gold, which is little gold specks. It is all throughout the Colorado River. And can we get it? Yes, we can. How much does it cost to get it? Now, back then, it was massive amounts of money. I mean, gold was valued at a different type of situation. Gold was money. But when they locked the price of gold at $20, which was below the cost of mining gold in very hard places to get it, like the banks of the Colorado River, back in the early 1900s, I mean, to get, in my analysis of what went on at Lee's Ferry when they were hydraulically mining, they mined a hell of a lot of gold, but it was so expensive to build a steamship in San Francisco and have it trained and wagoned and then donkeyed to a remote spot within a remote place on the planet back then. It was crazy expensive. So what happened? They set up the Federal Reserve System. Woodrow Wilson did two big things in his life. He gave the bankers the Federal Reserve System, which he regretted, but in the same breath, he locked up the Grand Canyon so that no gold could be mined there, and we'd save it for future generations. And then future presidents did the exact same thing. They kept that system going, the unbacked fiat system, but locked up more and more of the Grand Canyon. Now the entire Colorado River is unminable. You're not allowed to touch it. You're not allowed to take a pebble out of it, all the way up and down the Colorado River in the gold spots, which is like Glen Canyon and all the way down through the Confluence. Confluence is a big area. That's where I think on the conspiracy woo-woo side, I don't think it's woo-woo at all. If you've read all the stuff on Kincaid's Cave, which is from an article in the Arizona Gazette in the early 1900s about this guy, G.E. Kincaid, who was sent by the Smithsonian to try to document what's going on in the Grand Canyon. This is before most people had ever even heard of they'd heard of it, but they never traversed down it. He found a cave which had like halfway up the side of the cliff, and the American Indians, Native Americans, what do you want? The Indians, the Native Americans. I think it was the Hopi, it did fulfill all their myths and legends, and I think we don't give enough credence to myths and legends, but they have a myth or legend, or their history of the ant people creating a place, a big cave, for them to survive a cataclysm, and that was done. The cataclysm happened, and it's estimated 50,000 people could live in this one spot. I'm kind of going off topic, but not really, because I do believe that they found massive amounts of gold in these caves and tunnels and citadels, as they call it, within the Grand Canyon and all throughout the world. There's so many things we can't create today that were created over 10,000 years ago. And if you think they're not hiding their treasures, you're insane. We've done remote viewings on it as well. But I think a lot of gold was found there. And I think a lot lays in wait for the United States to return to a gold standard. Now, what Judy's talking about is, how do you go get over to a gold standard with the current system still running? Here's the biggest problem, that I don't know how versed Judy is in what went on in the Grand Canyon, what the Road to Roota documents out of the Fed are saying, that there's caves of gold in the Grand Canyon. They call it Cobblestone Canyon. But if she hung out with Greenspan and Paul Volcker, she probably, at some point, they probably gave her a little inkling of, oh, by the way, there's this other secret world that you aren't privy to. But maybe not. I mean, she speaks very well. But what she doesn't understand, I think, is that if you do set up a gold standard, she's talking about doing 50-year gold bonds with the gold in the United States. It's no different. It's no different than any other promise. How often does our government change? So no country has ever fulfilled this promise of, oh, we have a gold-backed currency. That's why we can never go back to a gold-backed currency. Once you lose faith, and faith is lost, by the way, in governments, you can't do that. No one would trust that the United States had 261 million ounces of gold. So why would you do it? What you do, if you really believed in I want to buy gold, you go out and buy gold. And no one would trust that the U.S. government could stay fiscally sane in the next 50 years. So although Judy is brilliant when it comes to the ability and the need for a root a anchor for any monetary system, I don't think that she would have to change her methodology if Trump brings her in after the system fails. Because all what she's talking about, 50-year bonds and all that, that's given that everybody else is playing in this insane world that we have today. And it doesn't fix any of the problems. So what happens, for example, let's just say Trump puts Judy Shelton in as the head of the Fed. She puts out the 50-year U.S. bonds saying these, in 50 years, we're going to pay this back. It's a promissory note again. And thinking that solves the problem. Well, you have a problem of a 3 quadrillions in derivatives that could destroy the system at any moment. And once that system is destroyed, there's no more trading of those bonds. That link between the gold-backed bonds and the actual gold will be broken instantly as the banks fail. So, I mean, I love her, Judy. I hope Judy has been trained further in that, oh, by the way, if we do have a collapse of the unbacked fiat monetary system because of a derivative meltdown, that all the Alan Greenspan maybe was the number one culprit when it comes to allowing banks to hold derivatives without regulation. The number one culprit. And why did he do it? He wanted to give the banks enough room to hang themselves, enough rope to say, oh my God, we're going to get so rich, all these mortgage-backed securities, blah, 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 that now the Fed is buying. It was all on purpose. He did it all on purpose. And I have a lot of articles on the Road to Roota. Greenspan's Golden Secret. Look this one up in the search function. One of my favorites is the Greenspan's Golden Testimony, where I give it kind of a fake rundown of him explaining, being grilled by Roota as to what he did while he was Fed chairman. Here, let me read it. I mean, settle in, put pause or whatever, get a cup of coffee, because this sums up, and I have all the backup for this. This is kind of a summary for your average Joe to understand. So they had this thing called the Angelinus Commission, which was put together by Congress to figure out why the 2008 financial crisis happened. And here's what I wrote about it. Alan Greenspan testified before the Angelinus Commission about the causes of the financial crisis. Even though he was under oath, I'm sure that the commission had been coached with their script to ask those softball questions that Greenspan can babble about for hours. Congressmen make lousy actors, but what if someone else got to ask the questions? What if Greenspan actually told the truth, the real truth this time? The truth that only a few people in the world knew. The following is a sworn testimony from Alan Greenspan that would take place in front of the committee, that won't take place in front of the committee, but it may take place in the future. Alan Greenspan will be questioned by a character in this saga he knows well, Roota. So any attempt at fabricating or twisting the truth will be squashed because Roota knows all. And now the sworn testimony from the maestro. And this is the chairman of the Alliitis of the commission. Dr. Greenspan, I'm going to act out these parts. Please raise your right hand. Do you promise to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Greenspan, I do. Commissioner Roota, thank you for testifying. This is Commissioner Roota speaking. Thank you for testifying. It will be nice to hear the truth come from your lips after all these years, and I'm sure you feel relieved that you will finally be able to speak freely. Mind you, I wrote this in like 2008, 2009, I think it was. And Judy Shelton just confirmed that he couldn't speak the truth. I like that. I mean, that's what? 15 years later. All right, I'm just going to run through it. I won't comment on it anymore. This is from Commissioner Roota. Thank you for testifying. It'll be nice to hear the truth come from those lips after all these years. And I'm sure you'll feel relieved that you can finally be able to freely speak. Greenspan, I have very much looked forward to this. Roota, I'm going to get right to the guts of this hearing if you don't mind. Throughout the first part of your life, you were the most avid gold bug on the planet. But in the mid-1980s, you sold out to the banking cabal and became the gold industry's biggest enemy. Why did you do it? Greenspan, I didn't. I have always been a diehard advocate of using gold as money, and I continue to be so today. Roota, but you worked for the evil Federal Reserve Bank. You were the king of fiat money, which is the opposite of gold, the only real money. Greenspan, yes, I did work for the Federal Reserve Bank, but only at the calling of my country. You see, back in the 1960s and 70s, the United States of America was in the throes of a secret takeover by a cabal of banking and industrial interests, and they were winning the battle. I was tasked with taking back the monetary system for our nation. Roota, that's about as far-fetched a claim as I have ever heard. Greenspan, is it really? Ask yourself a question. Who is the person most responsible for the crisis we are in today? If you are thinking it's me, you are right. And what do you think will be the final outcome of the monetary crisis? I'll tell you what the outcome is. The total destruction of all debt-based monetary assets. Everyone will lose everything held by a third party in a blink of an eye, and we will return to our constitutional gold standard. How's that for a gold bug? Commissioner Roota, what? You think this is a good thing? Greenspan, remember where we started. Our country was on the brink of losing everything to the bad guys. They had just taken down Kennedy, and they had control of the media, the military, the intelligence agencies, and they had control of gold and silver. Everyone was scared to death of the bad guys. Then I came along with a plan to better the world at some time as it took down the bad guys. Roota, what plan is this? Greenspan. It was based off the two Nobel Prize-winning economic theories developed in the 1960s called the Golden Rule Theory and On the Road to the Golden Age Theory, which basically said that the best way to return to a gold standard was to squeeze out all the benefits of a fiat money system while the people still accepted it. The way I got involved was that I devised a way to control the prices of commodities using computer trading programs that I wrote in the 1960s. Yep, I was the biggest computer geek in the world before computer geeks turned cool. That was my plan. Use my computer programs to rig the markets far longer than anyone thought possible, controlling the prices of almost everything to disguise the fact that we were running the printing presses at full speed the whole time. My childhood friend John Kemeny, the inventor of the computer language BASIC, helped me write the early programs. My mentor and friend, the ex-Fed chairman Arthur Burns, saw the potential of my plan and helped me get appointed as the head of the Council of Economic Advisors for President Ford. Roota. But wait, aren't we worse off today than we've ever been? Just look around you. Everything is falling apart. Greenspan. Well, that's true, but that was always the end game. We'd abuse the currency, run up massive debt, get the whole world to buy into the concept of free money, and then pull the plug on it, making people face the hard, cold reality that there is no free lunch. Roota. So you are saying we can't have a stable, unbacked fiat monetary system? Greenspan. Without total control of commodity prices, all unbacked fiat currencies will fail. A gold-based monetary system out of the control of man has always been the answer to an open and free market. History has shown that when human beings control the supply of money, they always destroy its value, without exception. It is the ultimate power over the people. How fast we forget that famous quote from the Dark Lord who attacked our young nation. Quote, "Let me issue and control a nation's money, and I care not who writes its laws." Mayor Amschel Rothschild. Commissioner Roota. So we're at a point where we pull the plug on the unbacked fiat money system. Is that what you had planned all along? Greenspan. Well, it didn't go exactly as planned. Things got pretty sticky when President Reagan left office. The bad guys run by Bush Sr. were given full control of the market rigging operations, and we all had to go into hiding. Clinton, Bush II, Obama were all controlled by the same powerful demons that stole my rigging programs. Luckily, I figured out a way to gain back control. I just had to give them plenty of rope to hang themselves with their own greed. Hence the deregulation of derivatives and removal of almost every regulatory control. Roota. So you did it all on purpose, knowing the bad guys would indulge to the point where it all collapsed. Greenspan. Yep. And I almost got them in 2008, but they were able to delay their final destruction. But we are now at the point Humpty Dumpty sings, "Ashes to ashes we all fall down." This will end the 100-year battle at last. Commissioner Roota. I can't see the bad guys losing anything. They never lose. Greenspan. They already have. Can't you see it? The derivative bubble has blown, and the losses are floating around in the back rooms and attics, hidden by shady accounting. What will transpire is the same thing that happened to over 2,000 unbacked fiat currencies in our past. They will implode. This does not include paper money, but everything we think has value, but actually is not real. Everything means checking, savings, 401ks, IRAs, government bonds, money market funds, stocks, bonds, pensions, everything made of debt-based paper or even electronic bits. Roota. And you are thinking this is a good thing? Greenspan. You tell me. Look around at what is killing our countries, our citizens, and our businesses. It's debt. Fiat debt created out of thin air by the banking cabal for so long that we don't remember what it's like to have money that has intrinsic value. That is not somebody's debt, but your asset. The coming crash will not only erase all paper electronic wealth, but it will also erase all debt. Voila, no problems. No more problems. Commissioner Roota, but where does that leave us? We have nothing. Greenspan, But that's where you are blinded. But that's where you have been blinded for years of fiat money abuse. Wealth is all around us. It is in the soil of our bountiful country. It is in the work ethic of our strong people. It is in the brilliance of our esteemed professors, and it is the wonderful spirit of the human soul. We're a very wealthy nation. It's just that the wealth has been stolen by a few at the expense of the many. Once fiat wealth disappears, it will correct that great wrong of disproportionate wealth distribution. Roota. But we'll still have no money. Are you suggesting we reallocate money to everyone in the country? How is that even possible? Greenspan. I have already thought of that. We're going to need to start again with a new money. We will allocate the new money by how much you have invested into the system up to this point. Your hard work has been carefully tracked over the years through Social Security taxes, and you thought those measly Social Security payments wouldn't matter. It was always the plan to reallocate through what you've been paid into Social Security. That solution will fix one of my first challenges when I began the journey back in the 1970s, to fix Social Security. Ta-da! Fixed. Roota. Is that why Social Security taxes are so low for the rich? So there won't be any more ultra-rich folks after the crash? Greenspan. Yes. It's time we start fresh. We will begin with a nation full of rich people because no one will have too much and no one will have too little, at least to start with. The free markets will take over in time, and those who are smarter, faster, better than others will surely begin to accumulate more of the wealth over time. It is the nature of liberty. Roota. I am truly blown away, and yet it really makes me feel like there might be a way out of our mess. How can I be sure the truth that this is the truth, as you claim? Greenspan. You will see in time. But if you want some hints into the reality of what's going on, follow the folks over at GATA. They are on the front lines of the gold wars, and they are working with us. Roota. I love GATA, but why should we believe you are on our side as well? Greenspan. I guess it won't hurt to let you peek behind the curtain a bit. Follow this link and read what has been discovered so far. It's the story of you, Roota. I hope you are proud in the end and you can give me and can forgive me for lying to you all these years. Roota. I hope so. Alan, I hope so. So the link goes to an article I wrote called Greenspan's Golden Secret. It goes through the history of Alan Greenspan, all the proof needed to justify the road to Roota Theory. Here's Greenspan and Arthur Burns talking about the big people. This came out of the Fed Boston, by the way. This is not I didn't invent this. All the people who live in Colorland are big and will get absolutely stepped on, and people are afraid. This is a comic book for kids talking about crushing little people. It's amazing allegory for what's going on right now. And then I go to who is Roota. Like, some of this stuff is not true, did not come to full truth. Like Rocky. I didn't know who Rocky was. So I don't even think I didn't even address it, but I found out who Rocky was, by the way. That was Greenspan's little computer guy. Anyway, great stuff there. You can search the Road to Roota website, search for Greenspan's Golden Secret. You can read that. Basically, all of that links back to this. I don't know how much Judy knows of the Road to Roota theory or of the hidden gold in the United States of America, or the what a derivative implosion would do to her gold-backed 50-year bonds. But hey, we move on. Let's hear a little more. I had a little more on. Let's see. We're at. Okay, jump right back in here at 38.
Field for international trade. What I'm suggesting, which will be called radical and dangerous, is one specific, doable initiative. We have those 261 million ounces that are worth about 700 billion. We are carrying them on the books at the Fed and Treasury at a book value of 11 billion. So there's a huge windfall profit in there. Those are the family jewels. We are in a family emergency from a fiscal sustainability point of view. I think it would fit in beautifully with what President Trump is introducing in terms of a renaissance of American economic recovery based on entrepreneurial energy. And I love that he refers to a golden age for America. I think on July 4th, 2026, which he plans to celebrate big time as the 250th anniversary of our nation's founding, U.S. Treasury, for the first time in over 50 years, should establish a link between the U.S. dollar and gold by issuing 50-year Treasury bonds. It's something discussed when I was on transition for the first Trump administration at Treasury. They looked at 50-year. France has a 50-year. But they decided 30 is, investors are fine with 30-year. Do a 50-year bond, and at maturity, it'll have a face value of the dollar. At maturity, bondholders can take either the dollars or the gold.
Watch this before drinking plant-based milks.
Oat milk latte.
Protein and oats acts almost exactly like gluten. And oats in this country.
Fixed rate of convertibility, preset, so they know they can have gold. And I think that would send such a signal that we are truly moving toward sound finances. We see that with Doge. Fantastic. Let's do it on the monetary side. Let's have a dollar that is literally as good as gold. And let's let that dollar compete. Let's let those bonds compete alongside Treasury bonds that are backed by the chair of the Fed saying we're really committed to our 2% target, which as of yesterday, they now think they'll hit not in 2026, but by the end of 2027. So you tell me what kind of a commitment that is versus a dollar that today, what you can have the option to convert your Treasury loan, you're lending to the U.S. government, but just like a TIPS bond, it's really very similar to a Treasury inflation-protected security, which is very popular and which Fed officials use to judge aggregate expectations about future inflation. A TIPS bond compensates people who would buy Treasury bonds, they're willing to invest in the U.S. government or finance its debt, but they expect to not lose purchasing power. And so they get compensated in accordance with the CPI. Well, what this is saying is someone says, I'm willing to lend money to the U.S. government, but I want to ensure I'm not going to lose purchasing power, but I define it in terms of real commodities, and my surrogate for that is gold. So in some ways, it's like existing Treasury instruments. It's a new option for bondholders. It wouldn't be the smallest type of Treasury debt that we issue. We have floating rate notes from 2014 that would be worth about $600 billion. This would be worth more than that. This, if you use the whole 261 million ounces, we're talking closer than to 700. If gold goes up, it's more. But that is my idea. And the other benefit of that is I don't want some future Congress or president to say, hey, let's just sell that gold. Let's just sell it. They did that in England under Gordon Brown when gold was worth
at the bottom at 252 bucks an ounce. Yeah.
I was in a cab in London and the driver told me how stupid the prime minister was to have done that. So people, that would be a mistake.
History has shown that to be the truth. Yes.
It would have been, it would be such a mistake. So let's warehouse that gold, audit it. I can't believe how many people have written to me, I love the idea, but I don't trust that we even have it. I think they've already used it up somehow. Audit, warehouse, and assign it as specific collateral for that bond. And then that's sending a message that on July 4th, 2076, we're still going to be here, standing tall, the United States, and we will be honoring. Look, what would be the greatest thing? What if people rather have the dollar than the gold? What if they choose that option?
As you can tell, I like for a normie yeah, that would be a normie gold bug. Oh yeah, that's great. You don't fix the problem. I mean, there is let's just call it $3 quadrillion in derivatives that would destroy the entire monetary system. If you think the United States is going to give, we have one, say we implement Judy Shelton's suggestion, we have one bond that's backed with gold, and we're going to, even though everything's collapsed, we're going to hold that for those people who bought that bond. It's just comical, truthfully. But she's coming from a normie understanding. You could also say that would be the one thing left standing within the United States, if the U.S. honored that obligation. I don't think the U.S. would honor it. I don't think anybody in the United States who lost everything would honor giving the U.S. gold to the bondholders, the rich people who bought it. The vast majority of Americans would not be able to buy that bond. Now, having said that, there is a way you could give that gold to the people. Why give it to rich bondholders if you're going to distribute wealth? What's the use of paying off fake debt with anything? Why tighten the belt at all? I think it's ridiculous at this point to try to tighten the belt. You're not going to solve anything. Doge is not going to solve anything without the destruction of the problem, which is unbacked fiat money and a derivative bubble bigger than humanity, a bond bubble bigger than humanity. None of this gets solved with a human solution. It does get solved with a non-human solution of a destruction. Let it crash. 2008, we were hours away from the entire system freezing. We wouldn't know the price of gold and silver. We wouldn't know the price of cryptos. We wouldn't know the price of stocks and bonds, or even the US dollar. We wouldn't know because the banking cabal, in all their brilliance, knows very well that if the system doesn't keep inflating, they lose. The banks lose. If the Fed loses, everybody who tries to control the system loses. And that is the poison pill that Alan Greenspan made sure was put inside the system, a $3 quadrillion derivative bubble that will destroy everything. Let's listen to one last comment she makes at the end. Again, go to the Miles Franklin website. If you don't have silver, by the way, yet, contact Andy Schectman, info@milesfranklin.com. Get as much as you can. I mean, this discussion is very, very meaningful, even though I think there's no way we could ever return to that system with the current unbacked fiat system ready to blow at any moment. But after it blows, I think very much so we can return to a gold system and having other future other currencies competing against gold. And Judy gets this very well in this last part that I'll play for you.
I have enjoyed our conversation, so forgive my being so long-winded.
That's okay. No, I love it. I got all the time in the world.
Well, I don't, fortunately, but thank you. Sorry, I just noticed the time. I have enormous respect for Senator Loomis, and I love the crypto community. I love the competition to the dollar, and I think at some point we're going to have to examine legal tender rules. There's one thing, you can have competitive currencies if you just define the dollar as something in tangible terms. I mean, that was the beauty of the gold standard. And then you could have competitive currencies, including cryptocurrencies. I like the benefits to the consumer of block technology and distributed ledger. Definitely, we want to capture that. But I would say this, Bitcoin doesn't need help with the strategic reserve. That's my position. I mean, Bitcoin doesn't need help. They're doing just fine.
They're just fine. Bitcoin's doing just fine. I agree with her on that. Trump adding Bitcoin to the, I would say, there's no reason for government to be involved at all with anything other than protecting our basic rights from the Constitution. how they got, the banks got control of the monetary system through the government. I think the people should be in control of the monetary system. So really interesting conversations. Dr. Judy Shelton. I would be in favor of her being on the. Well, I don't think the Federal Reserve will be around after the system collapses, but Treasury sure will be, and I think Dr. Judy Shelton would make a great Treasury Secretary. In a world after the collapse happens, she understands sound money. She understands. She doesn't understand how much gold there is, by the way. And somebody as far as I can tell, she didn't give any hints as to. She didn't talk at all about going back to a gold standard would mean you have to know the limited or the exact amount of gold that's available in the system. And I don't think we're even close. I think guys like Jeffrey Christian have lied to the public for so long, people take it as fact. And we see it all the time in silver, through the Silver Institute and Metals Focus, changing historical numbers. How many times have historical numbers been changed in the past, and how many times will it be changed in the future to fit whatever narrative the controlling system wants to portray? I think it's bullshit. Right now, I think when silver finally breaks free of the manipulation, it's not going to break free at $500, $800, $900 because it's traded on the COMEX and the LBMA, which would instantly bankrupt most of the players there, which are going to get bankrupted anyway. So yeah, they'll be shut down before we see silver on the LBMA go probably over $50. I mean, over on the COMEX or the LBMA. So that's what we have. I know it's long-winded, but that's my take. Again, an amazing discussion with Dr. Judy Shelton. Dr. Andy Schectman did a great job. He's the doctor of love. Definitely contact Miles Franklin for your physical silver purchases. After you go to your local coin shop, make those connections with your local guy. So important to have a local source for buying and selling. Don't forget, when silver breaks free, you're going to want to find someone to buy this metal from you when it's freely valued, or trade. Most of it I think will be swapped for other things. For example, maybe a tube of silver eagles for a Ferrari type of thing. And you might laugh now, but I mean, a tube of silver eagles right now is, gold eagles. How much is a tube of gold eagles? At 3,000 times 20 is $60,000. You can get a really nice car. Think of that as, what about silver eagles going 1-to-1 with gold? Yeah, it's $60,000 for a tube of 20 silver eagles. I do believe we're coming to that, and very soon. So as we get closer to the end game, which has already been started, obviously, there's a lot of keep an eye on what Cliff's saying on Twitter, and all the UFO sightings and all that, and the drones and everything. This is a very shaky time for a unbacked fiat monetary system, with the balloon in the bond market, balloon in the derivative market, balloon in the housing market, balloon in the stock markets. Everything is ready to pop. And when it does pop, you're going to be damn glad that you have physical assets in your own possession. Yes, I do consider some of the cryptos as physical assets, because you can hold them within your own possession. There's nobody's debt. When I say physical assets, the reason I say that is you don't have to rely on a third party at all. And whether it's I would call it a physical digital asset. I can make a wallet. I got wallets right here. I'll show you one. By the way, there's nothing on this, so don't try to scan it. That's a physical Theta wallet, if you ask me. It's got 5 Theta, 50 T fuel, and 500 T drop on it. It's in my own possession. If the system falls apart, I still own this. And if your mind goes right to, will the internet still be up and running with the collapsed system? Probably not. So cryptos might not even be trading. But when the system comes back up, which it would have to move forward, if not, we're dead anyway, so it doesn't matter. Gold won't do you any good, and silver won't do you any good in a world where there's no internet. Because the internet goes, you are screwed. Everything relies on the internet. All the nuclear plants will melt down and we'll be dead. there'd be no gas. Everything relies on the internet. It is the lifeblood of. It has become the lifeblood of today's society. We can't go back to what we had in the 1960s and 50s and 40s. We can't, and never will be able to. All those systems have been closed down. So even the cars today can't. If you can't get gasoline out of your digital gas pump, stuff like that, things break down. So definitely have physical assets in your own possession. Silver equals number one if you live in the United States. Silver in your own national currency, so important. My favorite, because I live in the United States, are pre-65 coinage, but the rates fluctuate. I used to be able to get it for under a spot because they figure, well, it's just they're not going to value the coins, but you can melt them down. The cost of melting them down just to get you the base silver, it'll cost you a little bit. So there were dealers selling pre-65 coinage for less than spot. I remember David Morgan saying, hey, I got a way, a long time ago, I got a way to buy silver less than spot. And he was talking about the pre-65 coinage. I don't think you'll see that again, and I don't think you ever should, because that is the money of the United States. Judy can tell you, the history of the United States. Nobody stopped the ability for our country to print its own money. We did coin its own money. The U.S. Mint coined money is the money of the United States. We did give the bankers the fiat system, and that's why Federal Reserve notes are not hard assets. They're a promissory note for $1, but it is no longer a good promise because they failed on that promise. A dollar is defined as a certain amount of physical silver, a certain amount of grains of physical silver, not they used to say the faith and credit of the United States. Well, that's shot to hell. Now it's nothing. Faith and credit was a pretty flimsy thing to back it up with, but now it's nothing. All right. For those of you just joining us, I just went through a very long conversation about this interview, like an hour and a half. For the private room members, go to roadtoroota.com about an interview that Andy Schectman did with Dr. Judy Shelton. Amazing human being, amazing mind. Some of the things I absolutely agree with, and she confirmed a lot of the Road to Roota stuff when it comes to what's going on behind the scenes of our monetary system. There's certain things she also said that I don't think will be able to work. So go check that out on the private road at roadtoroota.com. Right now, we are giving away, for private road members, we're giving away 5 Theta, 50 T-Fuel, and 500 T-Drop, all loaded on a paper wallet. Loaded on a paper wallet, that's as good as having physical in your own possession. That's physical crypto right here. Because, why do I say that? Because there's no third party. The system can collapse. You still got this. You're still on that blockchain. When the system comes up again, you'll be fine. But physical metal also. Silver and crypto's my favorite. Crypto by far is Theta. And Theta Fuel even better than Theta right now, but that'll swap back and forth. But Theta Fuel is undervalued, in my opinion, compared to Theta. Theta is the governance token of the Theta ecosystem, whereas Theta Fuel, that's the money. That's the juice that fuels the system. That people using AI will be scrambling to get T-Fuel. And we'll see how it goes. Anyway.